Jacksonville Jaguars going through what y'all need to know to make some money on this team in 2021. So full disclaimer at the very beginning, I am a Jaguars fan. If you think that, colors how this subjective review goes, then, that's up to you for sure. As far as my betting record, I think that kind of speaks for itself as far as understanding what this team is good or not good at. 12-4 on the strong bets, and the ones we're actually putting money on. Now, overall, I will say 2022-1, obviously nowhere near as good as I am with almost every other team. And a lot of that came down to some, frankly, stupid things happening, especially in regards to them covering spreads over the back half of the year. They put in some weird weather games, like in Green Bay. They had some special teams touchdowns, whatever. I don't want to make too many excuses or anything, but 12-4 still. We chilling. For the team, of course, I kind of skipped over 1-15 last year. Obviously, very, very tough. Coming out the other side with Trevor Lawrence, not so bad. So as far as the actual roster for this year, losses-wise, there are real snaps here. Keelan Cole, Keelan, not Kellen, Chris Conley, D.D. Westbrook, all guys who have at times been starting on this team. Keelan Cole is pretty good. Other guys, whatever. Tyler Eifert, not going to miss him. Gardner Minshew, that's a big one. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to talk about Gardner Minshew because this video is about the Jaguars. Gardner Minshew is absolutely a starting level quarterback in the NFL, and they traded him for nothing. That is a horrible, horrible move. Whatever it is, what it is. They've, Trevor now, so it's not like they're going to get much more, playing much more. Anyway, defensively, some guys I like to varying degrees, Joe Giles Harris, Karan Reed, but again, not anybody you really care about. In fact, finally moving on from guys like Avery Jones. Additions wise, so coming in, a lot of these guys, now I'm making this right after roster cuts, so some of these dudes are either currently free agents, likely to be brought back, and or going to be on the practice squad. But Chris Manhertz, Jamal Agnew, Tavon Austin, Marvin Jones, the biggest one. Philip Dorsett, a player I'll talk about, actually. But so some reasonable additions to the offense. Defensively, and we're going to talk about all these guys individually as we go through position by position as well. Defensively, Roy Robertson Harris, we'll get to that one. Boy, am I a fan. All these guys, going to be starters as of right now on this team. Malcolm Brown, Chad Griffin, Damian Wilson, Rashawn Jenkins. So this is the draft class. Now, they're rookies. I'm not going to talk about how good or bad they are until they get on the NFL field. We're trying to objectively make money on this team, and deciding how good a player is before they play ain't the way to do that. However, with all these teams, specifically this one, with how good the rookie, with them having a starting quarterback who is a rookie, we do have to talk about him, and we're going to get to that just about right now, actually. So number in the top right is the total number of players I've ranked at that position, and the number to the right of the name is where the player ranks out of that. So Trevor Lawrence, obviously, rookie, whatever. C.J. Beathard, 69th out of 76 as an example. Trevor Lawrence, let's talk about it. Good or bad, there are some clear tendencies he showed at Clemson that I'm going to lean into as far as talking about how this offense is going to function. Now, the extent to which that functionality is efficient, we'll get to that. That obviously is hard to project without knowing how good he is. But what did he do at Clemson, right? Well, he added a lot of value as a runner, as a guy who moved on the ground. And I do very much expect that to continue. He is a guy who was very much willing to push the ball down the field when he was given plays that allowed that to be the case. Clemson did run a lot of screens and short stuff, especially in this last year that he played into. Now, that's not really a bad thing either, being able to, or being willing to consistently execute a offense when it's a good offense and adding value to your team is absolutely a positive trait. Now it's, with Clemson being so much better than everybody, is that actually the case, or are they just killing people because they're more talented, whatever. But specifically in the NFL, I think it's pretty easy to assume that he's going to be pushing the ball down the field fairly consistently whenever he has the option outside of the Urban Meyer offense, which is something to remember. He also did show the ability to deal with pressure, not but for a rookie, he was not just chucking the ball out of bounds every time. So there are some things with Trevor Lawrence, like I said, we'll talk about how they interact with the entirety of the offense later, but that is what I'm kind of looking at him now. High end, I do think you're talking about a guy who could be as good as Justin Herbert last year, which, by the way, is a huge compliment. Justin Herbert's amazing. And on the lower end, again, when we're projecting this team, it's tough for me to be maybe as bad as it could possibly is, rookie year. I don't know, Drew Lock or something. That would be very shocking to me. But and then as a backup, CJ Beathard somehow is the one they kept. Obviously, trading away Gardner Minshew. Jake Luton was really, really bad, so that one I don't care about. But CJ Beathard is not a player who's going to win you games. In fact, he's going to actively lose you games by consistently making the wrong decisions as a backup. Not going to talk about him too much, but not a positive player. At running back, so here they're doing fine. I talk about running backs a lot, but there's only like 8 to 10 players who even matter at the position, who separate themselves from the gigantic group behind them. Jags don't have one of those. They do have James Robinson, though, who is more than capable of being a starter in the NFL, as proven last year. He's a guy who fairly consistently creates yards with good balance and strong legs and the ability to explode laterally into space. He does lack high-end speed, which is very much a limiting factor in keeping him away from that type tier of running backs, because he's just not going to be, getting into a crack and gone. It's just not going to happen like that. But that's not the only way to be valuable as a running back, like I said. He will consistently add yards to a play, and it's not just 1 or 2. He will actually create clean misses so that he can move 5-10 yards down the field more than he probably should have. James Robinson's pretty damn good. Carlos Hyde, too, as a backup. People want to be mean to Carlos Hyde for whatever reason. Everybody just seems to think he's garbage. That is just obviously not the case if you watch him on the field. He's more than capable. There's a reason he put up 1,000 yards on the Texans a couple years ago. While he's, again, not a running back who adds value, he's fine. If you gave Carlos Hyde 20 carries on the modern-day Browns, he would be a dominant production force, which is, it's the case for a lot of guys, but that includes Carlos Hyde. He does enough, actually similar to James Robinson, as far as being strong with his legs, having decent contact balance, not going down the first time he's touched, all that type of stuff. Carlos Hyde's pretty good. Dare Ogunbowale, he's not so much as a backup. He's a theoretical receiving back who is not explosive in any way. Devine Zigbo is actually on the practice squad. The same player, but worse. Same with Cottrell. And Travis Etienne, only time I'll mention him. This is the whole thing with first-round running backs, right? It's like him being hurt now for the year literally changes nothing about how you look at this team, which is a first-round pick is not what you want. As a Jaguars fan, obviously I'm sad about it. It would have been nice to watch a fun first-round pick on the field and all that type of thing. But as far as the effect on the team go, it is literally 0. So wide receivers. Now, this wide receiver room is really interesting. There's been a lot of rooms I've kind of covered as we go through these teams where they're missing the high-end number one guy. But there's a bunch of skill sets behind them of various levels of usefulness. Of all those that we've talked about, this is actually one of the better ones by quite a distance. While there is, definitely a lack of a superstar at the high end, they have a lot of guys who can play here. So starting with, obviously, the first 3, DJ Chark specifically. DJ Chark is a exceedingly useful player in the NFL. He is really, really fast. And it's not like some other guys like a Chase Claypool or something like that where it takes him a while to get going at full speed. DJ Chark is fast from the jump. He's not Tyreek Hill, but he's like up there. He's really, really, really good about it. He also, as a player, has grown into somebody who does create separation in his routes in the intermediate to deep levels of the field. Not somebody I'm trusting to like win quick off a slant off the line of scrimmage, but you're talking about digs, talking about crossing routes, talking about anything that's going past 8+ yards. He's going to be pretty damn good at it, especially if the pass protection holds up. You give him 4+ seconds. Now that, of course, is not unique to him, but it's still a useful thing to have and something that does apply to him. He also tracks the ball very, very well in the air. Which for a guy as fast as he is kind of a compounding factor in making him really valuable. Now, once the ball gets there, he's not the most physical guy. He is pretty skinny, and that does kind of show up in him not being able to snag the ball. He's not going to moss dudes very much. He's not all that good near the line of scrimmage. He's still fine, but he's not somebody who's creating a ton of yards after the catch, like with his lateral agility or anything like that. Again, he does kind of go down on first contact quite a bit. And as a short route runner, he's fine. He can do curls, that type of thing, and find space, but not somebody you're impressed with or is consistently moving into a ton of space, according to what the defense gives him. So I like him a lot. He's super, super useful, but he does actually have a bit of a ceiling as far as a every down possession or play driving receiver. Then you bring in Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones actually, frankly, is useful in a lot of the ways that DJ Chark is. They're almost identical. I think DJ Chark is better by virtue, literally, of just being faster at this point in his career. But Marvin Jones is still super good. He's super, super useful. He is a guy who just wins consistently down the field. Pound for pound, frankly, or inch for inch, whatever, I think he's probably the best or one of the top 3 contested catch receivers in the entirety of the NFL. He has super strong hands. He gets up. He has a big vertical, and he knows how to use his body, when to time his jump, all that type of stuff. Marvin Jones, is really, really good about winning the ball in the air. That's part of why he's been so productive year over year with Matt Stafford. Now, Matt Stafford's good in his own way, but he does push the ball down the field a lot, which, if you remember earlier, something Trevor Lawrence likes to do, and Marvin Jones fits that very well. He's also not just that's not all he does. He will win fine and actually get open in the intermediate to deep levels of the field. Nothing impressive. And he's not like DJ Chark in that he's just going to run away from dudes. Definitely not, especially at his age now. You don't always need that. He also does put in some work after the catch as far as trying hard, playing through contact. Not going to be shaking dudes or creating huge plays, but he is at least fine with that. And near the line of scrimmage, well, again, he is limited because he's not super explosive laterally, and it's not like his technique in that area of the field is amazing. He can do fine. He can run slants. He can do that type of stuff to a well enough degree to be relevant in your offense. So Marvin Jones, huge fan, big add to this team. And then you have Laviska Shenault, who, frankly, might end up being the best of these three. As of right now, because I don't necessarily like projecting a whole lot of growth in players, which I'm not going to get into right now. But what does he give you, right? Because that's the useful thing when you're talking about projecting him. He is a player who did show that his reputation as an after-the-catch dominant force from college came through. Now, he's not doing dudes the way he did in college, which nobody does, but he consistently creates really, really good yardage. He's very quick. He has good balance. He actually is very strong. Part of his thing was he's a running back, a wide receiver. That really shows up when you watch him. He consistently creates yards. He also has flashed really, really good hands in traffic, the way that a tight end has a reputation for, coming down with balls in traffic. Laviska Shenault did that a lot in his rookie year. So that type of stuff is really, really impressive. And a good foundation that can pretty much guarantee is going to make a useful player for a very long time. Injuries not included. The rest of the stuff, though, while I'm not scared, I'm not crazy encouraged. That being getting open down the field, winning quickly at the line of scrimmage. It's not like he was impossible at that, and his role in the offense last year was fairly limited, and he was also hurt for a lot of his rookie year. Plus, rookie receivers, I talk about this a lot, just aren't very good most of the time anyway, especially that type of thing. So I do think there's a real chance he gets a whole lot better, but it's not something I'm going to guarantee. Regardless, as of right now, he's a very useful player. Depth-wise, so funny enough, these top two did just get cut and put on the practice squad. Philip Dorsett, I pretty much guarantee you will be back. I want to talk about Philip Dorsett because he would help this team a lot as long as he's on the active roster. The reason being, he wins kind of in the same way as Marvin Jones, not nearly to the same level, but the dude just consistently wins down the sideline 10 plus yards down the field. All the time. He's great at stacking defenders, getting body position. He's goddamn fast enough, and he tracks the ball very well while using his body to shield it away from corners. He's very, very, very good. Now, that is effectively the only thing he's good at. If you ask him to run any type of short route, do anything with the ball in his hands, to move inside the numbers for any reason, generally, he's going to lose effectiveness really, really quickly, which obviously is very limiting to his upside in the offense. But as that specific guy who can bring that skill set, Philip Dorsett is really underrated. He's amazing at it. And frankly, the Seahawks should have played him more. I'm still mad about that. Whatever, I think got hurt. But then also Laquan Treadwell on the price, whatever. He was kind of good in the preseason, but he's just so athletically limited as a big receiver who doesn't actually get open that it's hard to see him being all that useful. Jamal Agnew comes over. Now he's more of a kick returner, but I will say he did show flashes on the Lions when they were using him as a gadget player who was running jet sweeps or catching screens and that type of thing, that his kick return skills actually came through on the offensive side. That is not always the case. There are a lot of returners, even good returners. Think an Andre Roberts or even the good ones like a Josh Cribbs, something like that. Offensively, the way that their explosiveness in the kick return game shows up doesn't always show up actually on offense. Jamal Agnew at least flashed that. Not going to super lean into it, and it's not somebody I was impressed with as a downfield receiver in the few times he was asked to do it. But that skill set, if you're smart about it, can be very useful. They also keep Tavon Austin, who's effectively the exact same player. Tavon Austin's actually fairly underrated, has been for a little bit. The dude does good things on offense by not getting open, but by being explosive and being very fast. Again, no way he's any better than that. His ceiling's super capped, but it is something. Then you have Devin Smith in the practice squad, fast player, and I was crazy excited. The other big one, though, is that last one, Tyron Johnson. They just claimed him from the Chargers, and let me tell you, Tyron Johnson is pretty goddamn good. For, I believe, an undrafted rookie last year, he showed some real things as a deep threat, funny enough, guy like the other guys on this team that were really impressive. He's like pretty goddamn fast in a straight line. Playing with Justin Herbert, he showed a good understanding of how to like adjust his routes to move down the field into even more space. There are a lot of things I liked about Tyron Johnson. Now, that's kind of some of these other guys about it. He's not somebody who's particularly impressive as a route runner in any other area of the field, as the guy with the ball in his hands, if he wasn't just running in a straight line, nothing special. But I do like him, and I think there's a chance that, frankly, he also is a lot better than I have him ranked right now. Then it's tight end. So this one's tough. Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy's the only guys we're talking about. Chris Manhertz comes over from the Panthers. He's a blocking only tight end who blocks fine, not like a dominant force at it. He's good enough to be useful. I suppose he can be on the field as a in-name starter for the first couple downs, sure. And he's not a disaster as a receiver. He at least will catch the ball and do that type of thing. But that's it. James O'Shaughnessy, though, is actually – so he should be the starter on this team. He's dealt with some injuries for multiple points in his career with the Jaguars. The dude, when he's on the field, is like not good, but he's fine. He fits into this big old category of tight ends. There's the top 20 that actually are adding value and doing positive things for your offense. And there's this big ass category of dudes who are all basically the same player, who are out there executing your offense, being where they're supposed to be, running the routes they're supposed to route, not really doing anything different than any of the other guys would be doing, but is still a fairly useful skill set as far as if your offense is good, they help. And James O'Shaughnessy absolutely fits in that category. He's a little bit of an underrated athlete. He can do some things as a blocker. He's fine, is the point. And makes this tight end room not be quite as bad as some people think. Still not good, to be sure. So then the offensive line. This is the real questionable one on this offense. I don't know that it's that bad the way some people, especially Jaguars fans, want to talk about it, though. You started tackle. So Cam Robinson comes back into the franchise tag. Cam Robinson is a starting level tackle. He is on the lower end for sure across the league, but he's a guy who does add some value, especially as a run blocker. He will move guys at the point of attack. If he's the front side, strong side blocker, he will do double teams very well. He can affect linebackers if he gets to them. He's not a great athlete, but actually if he's moving forward, he's not so bad, especially kind of in a straight line. He's fine. As a pass protector, which is obviously the more important part and definitely what keeps him down, he is not good. But again, I don't really think he's all that bad. He definitely has very clear struggles against true speed, like bend the edge rushers. If he plays against like a TJ Watt, or it doesn't even have to be that good, like a Dante Fowler or something like that, somebody who has that specific skill set, you do start to get pretty scared. But anything other than that, he handles power okay. And even those guys that are quick rushers, he's not necessarily going to get smoked. He will have plays where he loses balance. He's not great about staying on his feet all the time, but he is serviceable, especially if you get offense around him. Then the other tackle, Juwan Taylor. So Juwan Taylor is kind of the same player without the high-end run blocking and a little bit worse in pass protection. So not as good of a player, but a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses as far as stylistically, if that makes sense. And again, he's somebody that I think is pretty underrated by at least Jaguars fans, because they want to say he's not even worthy of being in the NFL, which is it's just not true. He's fine. Not going to add a lot of value to the offense. I do worry about him being a whole lot better than he is right now, going into his third year as an offensive lineman in the NFL. But he does have some real skills as a guy who's not going to get smoked by most pass rushers. He absolutely is going to struggle against the high end, which is not what you want. But I mean, that applies to the vast majority of offensive linemen in the NFL. And overall, I actually think, he's fine. And again, if you have a good offense, you can live with this tackle duo. Backup-wise, Walker Little, rookie. We'll see. Some people like him. Will Richardson Jr. is not very good at all. At guard, Andrew Norwell, AJ Cann are your starters. Andrew Norwell is better than fine. He's a above average to good starter, and he has been for a long time. He gets clowned because he signed a gigantic contract to the Jaguars, and his first year wasn't all that amazing, but frankly, he was fine. Andrew Norwell does his job very consistently, pretty well. Never going to be a huge high-end playmaker from the guard position as far as destroying dudes and double teams or that type of thing, but that's fine. You don't always need that. He will do his job. He will win at the point of attack generally, and as a pass protector, he's not somebody who worries me generally at all. He's not perfect, sure. Is he going to get beat by Aaron Donald? Whatever, yeah, but against the vast majority of interior rushers, I'm more than comfortable with Andrew Norwell out there. AJ Cann, not so much. he is, man, pretty damn bad. He probably had the best year of his career, funny enough, last year, actually, where he was not quite pretty damn bad, more just closer to like bad. But yeah, he's just a play. He just has no balance when he plays. He ends up on his ass all the time. He will get swum so quickly by any type of good interior rusher. And that doesn't, not just a pass protection, as a run blocker too. That is kind of his strong point, is that he can move dudes on the line of scrimmage. He can affect the line of scrimmage, pushing it into the defensive backfield a little bit. But he's not this like big road grader out here. He's just like kind of okay at that, and it looks better when he's as bad as he is at everything else. So AJ Cann is a problem for sure, has been for a long time. Ben Barch, as a rookie, I think he did show more than AJ Cann probably ever has, but still wasn't very good. He was fine, but his play strength clearly leaves something to be desired, which as a rookie, maybe that's not so scary because he's going to get better. Maybe not something you can guarantee though. And yeah, he did okay as like a movement guy up and down the line of scrimmage. Not, I don't know about a starter though. Then at center, so there you're chilling. Brandon Leonard's awesome. He's been very, very good for a long time. Not quite elite compared to the top guys around the NFL, like a Frank Ragnow or something like that. Doesn't have the athleticism completely, and is not all that much of a winner at the line of scrimmage. But he's still good at that stuff. It's just not compared to the elite across the league, like I said. And similar to Norwell, is like a money pass protector. You're never worried about him. While he's not perfect, it's not going to be a matchup that is possible really to be exploited by the other team, which is really positive, especially for center. Brandon Leonard's awesome. Backup wise, Tyler Shatley's pretty bad. You don't want him in a game. So that's tough. So when you talk about how this offensive line works in general, or sorry, how this offense works in general, I think it's really, really one of the more interesting ones in the NFL. And I'll tell you, man, these pieces, despite not being all that high end around, actually fit fairly well as long as their kind of one big weakness isn't exposed, which obviously is asking a lot and it's easier said than done. But independent of the defense, you're talking about a team with a quarterback who's likely to push the ball down the field very consistently and a group of receivers who are going to win down the field very consistently between DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Philip Dorsett if he plays, Tyron Johnson. They have guys who are going to be open and or in good positions down the field very, very frequently on like a almost play-by-play basis. Now, they're not perfect. If you get into really high-end secondaries, I start to absolutely get worried. But high-end secondaries are high-end because there's not that many of them around the league, right? And anything besides that, you're really looking at real positives, especially if Trevor Lawrence is any level of good. Like I said, he's going to have options down the field to win, and down the field, that's where you make your money in the passing game. That's where the real value comes. So that's really positive. And frankly, as an offensive line, they're fine. What really worries me, as mentioned with both Cam and Juwan Taylor, is if other team has like a dominant edge rusher who's going to just baby these tackles consistently, like a TJ Watt would be the main one I could think of specifically for this matchup. But obviously, Myles Garrett, those types of guys apply too. Daniel Hunter would be another one, would be really scary. That would be really bad because then all of a sudden you have a rookie quarterback behind a offensive line throwing to receivers who will get open but won't get open all that quick, making a lot of rookie mistakes. Putting the ball into that type of shit. You start to see really, really big negatives pretty quickly. But if that's not the case, like I said, if they're not consistently winning on the edge, the defense, then this team works fine. And as a run game, while they're not going to be dominant, they're kind of no chance to be, 49, that type of shit. Their scheme's not good enough. They don't do enough smart things with the way they run the ball. They do overall work fine. Their unit will work well pushing the line of scrimmage. They have decent running backs. Like, they're going to be okay running the ball. And we'll see how this offense goes. If they can use Laviska Shenault, Jamal Agnew correctly, then they do have some weapons as far as easy throws to guys who can make plays. It's not that I'm crazy excited about, but I just got to mention that there's really a chance this offense is like reasonable. And that's not even including the possibility that Trevor Lawrence is as good as everybody says he is. Because if that's the case, then you're going to be a lot better than reasonable, frankly, with this offense. So if that's the case with the offense, how good does the defense have to be to make them competitive? The answer is better than what they have available, which is tough, but let's talk about what they do have available. So on the defensive front, this is kind of starting on the high end here. They're pretty goddamn good at the line of scrimmage, this defense. Maybe, not one of the best in the league, but like one of the better ones for sure. Some smart signings, good players like Roy Robertson Harris, one of the best signings of the offseason. Dude is amazing. For some reason, he's not a big name, whatever he did. But in Chicago, where he comes from, he was all of last year just making play after play after play, was always in the backfield, is a real relevant pass rusher from an interior position, which is not particularly common in the NFL. The dude is just a monster, and he's going to win and help this team a lot. Roy Robertson Harris was very good. Devon Hamilton was one of the absolute best rookies in football last year before he got hurt. He showed so many really, really positive dominant skills from the nose tackle position. It was great to see. He wasn't just a big fat guy who was in there stuffing gaps. He was consistently using his hands to win. He was controlling offensive linemen. He has not explosiveness. That's probably too strong of a word. But explosiveness for a guy his size, as far as getting into the backfield and actually being able to be the reason a play is made at the line of scrimmage, as opposed to hoping, a linebacker or somebody else on the defensive line can come into the space that he has eaten up. Devon Hamilton is extremely good. Malcolm Brown, too, they traded for from the Saints, is a absolute starter-worthy player. I do worry about his high-end impact, not somebody who's going to be doing the things that the other guys are as far as making plays, but he does the rest of it. He holds his gap very well. He does have good hands. He can control offensive linemen a little bit. He's strong at the point of attack. Malcolm Brown is overall, like I said, pretty good starter level player. And depth-wise, you got some dudes here. So Adam Gotsis is a run-only defender, but he's very, very good at it. He is I don't really understand why, but he's very good about making plays in the backfield, consistently squeezes through gaps, consistently holds the point of attack well, has very good hands in the run game, does all that stuff. Adam Gotsis is super valuable as a run defender, very underrated. He's really, really good at it. Now, as a pass rusher, he's nothing, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you look at the way he wins in the run game, as far as being quicker than everybody and being more, not explosive, but smarter. Whatever, though, the point is on the field, he doesn't. So you'd have to live with that. Then back up nose tackle, you have Doug Costin, who is actually on the practice squad now for God knows why. Doug Costin can play. As an undrafted rookie last year, the dude was consistently winning at the point of attack, at least not getting pushed back. Now, he does fit a lot more classically into the big fat nose tackle stereotype, to be sure. But that is valuable, and he showed that he could do it a good clip. So whatever, he is still in the practice squad. I would assume he'll be back on the active roster for quite a bit because he's too good not to be. Then in the other spot, there it gets a little tougher. Dwan Smoot, he tries really, really hard, but that's about it. He's a pretty actively, that 107th ranking, by the way, is out of edge players, not out of defensive tackles. But yeah, he's a guy who was he's an above average 4-3 outside run defender who hustled hard as a pass rusher, but had no moves or ability to beat tackles. How that's going to translate to a 5 technique, to an interior guy, we'll see. I think there's a chance it actually goes better than I'm expecting. I will fully grant that. But as of right now, what I'm looking at is you're just taking a guy who already struggled to win and putting him against even bigger dudes when he was already a power-dependent player. And I'm a little bit worried about that. But as a backup, there's a real chance he'd be okay at that. Then Taven Bryan. Taven Bryan's not good, but he, as a, first-round pick who nowhere near lived up to expectations, gets, I think, too much hate because he does kind of show some play strength and very occasionally will get into the backfield. He's not that bad. He has some NFL-level skills that, while I don't expect him to ever get better, really be a player who's worthy of starting, definitely not of starting. As a back into your rotation guy, there's a chance he could do some things, especially against bad offensive line. That's not high praise, to be clear, but I will say it's something. Then at edge. So this is the spot that kind of concerns me on this defense as well. There's one other bigger one that we'll get to, but we'll see. So Josh Allen to start with. Josh Allen missed most of last year. Josh Allen is absolutely a good player. He's a clear starter level player who does a lot of really, really positive things for your team on the field. He consistently holds the edge well in the run, very well in the run game. He is very strong about the way he does it. He can actually make plays, again, especially in the run game. He's overall a very good player. As a pass rusher, he is fine. He is not the true winner that high-end pass rushers are. He's never going to be someone who cleans out a tackle very quickly, regularly. It can happen. But he's not going to be a dominant force game to game as a pass rusher. He is, again, very useful. He tries very hard. He does have some moves. He has some light speed rush to him. Josh Allen's overall a very, very good player. I do worry about his high-end impact, though, just to be clear about him. On the other edge, Yeah, that one is the tough one. So K'Lavon Chaisson, last year, rookie first rounder, he did get better for sure as the season went on. He has very clear athleticism that kind of leaps off the screen when he's playing as far as a space dude, like, moving independently, moving laterally, type of things that aren't when he's interacting with an offensive player, when he's just moving by himself. That's what I mean. He showed a lot of real ability as that. And as the year wore on, like I said, he did start to show a little bit as far as a guy who had some pass rushing moves, who maybe, if he puts it together, could be a relevant speed rusher in the NFL. I'm not exactly encouraged about that, but I do think there's at least a chance. What worries me, though, is his play strength is pretty bad. As a full-time starter, he's going to get pounded in the run game, I would suspect. And while occasionally he will make plays, you're kind of the highest end you're hoping for is he gets to what like Brian Burns can do in Carolina, which that's tough because Brian Burns is very good and has worked really hard on that side of the game. So yeah, I don't know. K'Lavon Chaisson, he could get a lot better than this. I will say it's not like some players where I think his potential is completely capped to where he is, but I don't know that I'm encouraged. Backup wise, then it's even tougher. Learnstein McCray is a special teams player, and Jihad Ward they bring over from the Ravens is just, he'll hold the edge. Okay, he's been like going to be a disciplined veteran, but that's about all he brings. So that's a little tough. At off-ball linebacker, Miles Jack at the high end is amazing. Miles Jack is an elite player. He is right in that second level of linebackers. You got Bobby Wagner, Fred Warner right at the top. Then there's this kind of group of like 5-6 guys that are all very, very close. Miles Jack is in that. Miles Jack is is probably the best man coverage linebacker in the entirety of the NFL, maybe with Fred Warner. No one I would pick at the linebacker position to cover like a Travis Kelce or something like that higher than him. He's a crazy athlete, all that type of thing. He actually uses it well. He doesn't really get it mispositioned. And as a run defender, he was goddamn good last year. He consistently was in the right position. He fires very, very quickly and is generally right. Will make plays in the backfield. Miles Jack is super, super useful. Covers so much ground in the defensive backfield. He's awesome. Now, I will say he is a little bit flawed as far as that triggering quickly. He's going to be more wrong about it than a Bobby Wagner is, than a Darius Leonard is at the top, which is kind of the difference between the two, but still, whatever, very good player. The other starter spot, though, it's kind of crazy to me how much they've leaned into Damian Wilson. Damian Wilson was granted, so he was the best linebacker starter on the Chiefs Super Bowl team who had the worst group of linebackers in the league. So that's it's a compliment and very much not one at the same time. I don't know. Damian Wilson wasn't like horrible, and he was in a fairly bad position generally with the way the Chiefs run defense, especially at that point, played. But he's not good. Definitely not good. He's one of these like veteran in the right place middle linebackers who's supposed to set up help set up a defense and just kind of run fit the way he's supposed to. There's no way, though, he gets past that as a useful player. He just doesn't have the athleticism, the explosiveness, the playmaking instincts or ability to help your defense. You're just kind of putting him out there and hoping he doesn't hurt you too bad or doesn't get found in coverage, because that's the other thing. That guy got smoked in coverage a lot when he was on the Chiefs. Now, partly that's on the Chiefs and what they asked their linebackers to do. I will be clear about that, but he really worries me. So then, you have Dakota Allen as a backup who, frankly, in some starts last year, showed some things that I was pretty encouraged about. Now, it wasn't all that high end. He's a player in the vein of Miles Jack, who's nowhere near as good, meaning he's a big-time athlete. He can make a lot of plays with a lot of range. He will trigger pretty quickly in the run game and make some plays. However, he's going to be wrong way more often than a player like Miles Jack. And as a coverage player, while his athleticism does show up a little bit, it's not something that is consistently limiting to an opposing offense. Then you have Shaquille Quarterman, Chappelle Russell, like special teams guys. Outside corner. So this group, it is what it is. It's a really interesting one that kind of reminds me of the receiver group on the high end on the other side, where none of these players are super high end at this point, but they could end up working together as a group of skill sets. Okay. I would have liked that better before they traded Sidney Jones away, just a couple of days before this video. But let's talk about what they have. I'm going to start with CJ Henderson, actually, because he's the best one by far. CJ Henderson, as a rookie last year, showed so many things that were very much reminiscent of like elite corners around the NFL, especially when they're younger. I mean, we're talking about like a Jair Alexander, I think is the best corner in football. Tre'Davious White, Marshawn Lattimore. Now, he wasn't, to be clear, he definitely wasn't as good. And he started better last year than he ended, which is weird. I don't know if concerning is the word I'd use, but as far as an athlete who was actually keeping up with even like really good NFL receivers in space, consistently getting there at the catch point, showing that he wasn't going to get burned in coverage. CJ Henderson was really, really, really good, and there's a chance he turns into one of the best corners in football. And plus, remember, most rookie corners are not good. That's why I said reminiscent of guys like Jair Alexander, because Jair Alexander, he was good as a rookie, but like he wasn't the player that he is now. Stuff like that. So there's a lot of things I really, really like, and I'm encouraged about with CJ Anderson. Now, I'm not going to guarantee he hits that high point because he's a little bit skinny. He's not crazy physical, and it's not like he was always there at the catch point. And there were a few plays where he did kind of bite on double moves, was a little bit too aggressive. We get burned, that type of stuff. So I'm not going to go crazy on him, but there's a real chance CJ Henderson is getting slipped on as a true elite talent as of the moment. Then you bring in Shaquille Griffin, one of the worst contracts you're going to see in the offseason. Horrible, horrible move. Very unhappy with this one. Shaquille Griffin does have a unique, specific skill set that is useful in very specific situations. The question you have to ask yourself, though, is how often do those situations come up, and how hard is it to do what he does, even if it's a player without that skill set? And the answer to those is it's just not adding the value that you want it to. He's a big physical outside press corner who doesn't keep up with the actual good, big physical outside receivers in the NFL. Which is really scary if he's a number one corner. What do I mean by that, by the way? So, right, if you take a mid-tier player like a Devontae Parker or something, right? Shaquille Griffin does have the physicality, the technique to stick them at the line of scrimmage generally and stick with them up and down the field outside of the numbers. I will very much give him that. That is clearly the case. That's why he got paid. The problem is when you get to the high end of receivers where you need that skill set to actually limit them, where players like Jalen Ramsey, Stephon Gilmore really come through when they're playing against a Mike Evans, when they're playing against a Julio, that type of thing. There, Shaquille Griffin gets really scary. If you want, there's literal evidence. Look at Mike Evans' stat line against the Seahawks. I think it was 2 years ago. He put up like 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was almost exclusively on Shaquille Griffin in one-on-one coverage. Now, yes, I understand Mike Evans is good, but that's why you pay a corner like Shaquille Griffin theoretically, is to mess with the ability of players like that to go off on you, and he does the opposite. He actually pretty actively encourages it. So that is really scary. He does have a unique skill set. Okay, I'm being too negative, by the way, in general. He's not horrible at the other stuff. It's not like he can only do that. Otherwise, he's screwed. But he really does worry me, especially when you give him as much money as you did. Then you have a effectively first-round rookie, Tess Campbell, first pick of the second round. Rookie corner, probably not going to be very good, but there's a chance. We'll see. In the slot, they are choosing, it looks like at this point, to start Trey Herndon again. That is going to go horribly. Trey Herndon is a little tiny corner who can't play physical players and also can't play quick players because, for whatever reason, despite being a little guy, he does not have the lateral athleticism or ability to stick with them in main coverage. Trey Herndon is very concerning as a starter. He's going to get burned way more often than he should be. Now, he's not quite the awful player that, some of these younger slot corners that just came into the NFL are. I'm not going to name any names right now, but he's not quite that bad, but he's not a positive for your defense. And you also have Chris Claybrooks, who's a 7th-round rookie last year, showed more than I ever would have expected for a 7th-round rookie corner on the outside. I will very much grant you that. He was not getting smoked most of the time. However, I do struggle with seeing how he gets to be a useful player as opposed to somebody who you're trotting out there and I'm like, yeah, maybe he won't get 200 yards put up on him. Then it's safety. So this is the other big question mark. Mostly because, they have the talent for it not to be, but I'm very much concerned with who they're actually going to put on the field. You bring over Rayshawn Jenkins from the Chargers. Not a player I'm crazy comfortable speaking it too much on. He's missed some time in the last few years when I've really, really, really been watching stuff. So I will admit that freely. However, from what I've seen, Rayshawn Jenkins is a player who's going to do some veteran things for you. He's going to be able to play in the box down the field, has some versatility, and while he's not going to be a high-end guy, he can at least be useful generally and not be a reason your defense sucks. The other spot, though, that's what I'm talking. So Andre Sisco is a high-end, hope to be high-end rookie who I I'm just going to assume he ends up starting, frankly, because given what he's competing against, there's like no way he doesn't. But yeah, Andre Sisco's actually, we'll see. He's a rookie. Jared Wilson actually got cut on he's on the practice squad now. He's enough of a rookie that I suspect he will be back through most of the year. Enough of a veteran, sorry, not a rookie. That's trouble. He's just a really bad NFL level athlete. He will be safe and be back, but the problem is his range is about zero, is about as small as you're going to find as a player who started games of free safety in the NFL. Not a good tackler generally. He can if he's one-on-one, the guy's running right at him, sure, he'll take his legs out, that type of thing, but not going to be a high-end player who's cleaning up stuff across the field. In fact, it's the opposite. He's frequently the reason the Jaguars would give up long runs because he just doesn't have the athleticism to catch running backs as they sprint by him, and he is 20 miles per hour slower. So that's Jared Wilson. That one's tough. Daniel Thomas, as a rookie, showed some real things, and he should be given more a chance to play on defense. Right now, they look at him more as a special teams player. I really don't understand why. He wasn't great or anything, but he showed clear signs as a rookie secondary player that he could play, that he had instincts, that he could get in the box a little bit for somebody who's a little bit short, and overall was a useful player who should get more time. Andrew Wingard. So that's this team somehow kept Andrew Wingard on their roster. Andrew Wingard has been the worst player in football over the last few years, unquestionably. He single-handedly loses games if he plays defensive snaps for you. It is effectively impossible to win if he is on the field. He is so far away from an NFL-level athlete that he will get traffic coned by anyone who gets in the defensive secondary. And when you have somebody whose job is as a safety to clean things up and have defensive responsibilities down the field that not everybody else can get to, and then you put somebody out there who can't do any of that, it gets you screwed. You're going to be in an awful position. He has no ability as a pass defender either down the field. He has no instincts. His brain don't work. Listen, Andrew Wingard, maybe he's I have no idea. As a football player, he's actively unbearably horrible. So how does this defense work as a whole? I don't want to talk about Andrew Wingard anymore. I will say, depending on how they're coached schematically, this team has enough talent, especially in the front seven, to be okay. When you look at teams who are really smart about the way they use their front sevens, a team like the Ravens or the Dolphins, you'll find that individually, Jaguars are just as talented, if not more. Not than the Ravens necessarily, but especially the Dolphins, I think, is a really good example. This team can do that stuff very comfortably. They have, between Josh Allen, Roy Robertson-Harris, Devon Hamilton, Miles, they have super, super talented players who are all very good at their respective positions. However, that is assuming so much to ask a team to be able to do that at a high end. It barely ever happens. And it's dependent on some other factors this team probably can't meet, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, that worries me. And if they just play it straight up more conventionally, then while I do like all those players I mentioned, none of them are the high end winners you need to be a really, really good defense. They don't have Myles Garrett, obviously. They don't have Christian, none of that stuff. Josh Allen's not going to be a high end enough number one pass rusher to have a good pass rush. It's just kind of okay. And the other edge, like I said, I start to get pretty worried about that. And even if they are as well coached, like as the Dolphins partly are so good because they can depend on crazy good corners to not get your team smoked over and over again. And while this team has the potential to have that between C.J. Henderson, Tyson Campbell, and maybe Shaquille Griffin, No, I really don't see it, especially for this year. Shaquille Griffin is going to get burned way too much when he tries to cover actual good players. CJ Henderson is just not there yet. And and then you have Trey Herndon in the slot, who is almost by himself a big enough red flag to say that that's not going to work. So that really starts to concern me overall. And then as a run defense, they're going to be fine because the front three is good and Josh Allen can play. They're going to be okay. I suspect them to be coached well in that area for sure. But again, you really aren't going to be super, super high end because of the one edge, whoever, Kayla on Jihad Ward, whoever that is. I will say I've kind of talked myself into them being pretty good as a run defense, but that only gets you so far. So when you look at their schedule, we talked offensively, right? What's really going to give them trouble? Teams with really good edge rushers is the number one thing that stands out to me. They do catch the Broncos week 2. That is probably a non-starter. That is really, really bad. But past that, man, they're actually chilling, which is something about the schedule. It's kind of when you actually look at it, there's no other teams with like really relevant edge rushers across the entirety of the first half of their schedule. And while the Dolphins will do things to create pressure, it's not going to be the same type of thing. And even in the back half, 49ers are pretty good if they're fully healthy. It's like the same thing, though. And so the next thing you look at is teams with really good safety, because if Trevor Lawrence is going to be pushing the ball down the field, he is a rookie throwing to receivers who are good but not great. A real good free safety can really impact that. But again, it's like you catch Justin Simmons with the Broncos in week 2, and you do have Kevin Byard in division with the Titans that will freely admit, Seahawks have Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. And the Bills have their safeties too. Like, it's definitely harder, but it's outside of the Broncos and Titans, it's nothing that horrifying, especially, because they kind of lack the other stuff to take advantage of this offense. So there's a real chance of this offense. The point is, there's a real chance this offense is fairly productive and actually reasonably good. I do struggle to see how they're going to be consistently successful on drive-by-drive basis, but they can do some stuff. Defensively, it's tough. They basically need a team who's not going to beat them through the air reliably, which, hey, Texans, Bengals, maybe. Dolphins, maybe. Like, there's chances. The point is, overall, the schedule's pretty soft. And this team, if Trevor Lawrence is good, has a real chance to be competitive. Are they going to win a lot of games? Almost guaranteed no. But there's more talent here than people maybe expect. And this team, like I said, has a lot of teams that they can play close and potentially beat. And that is the Jaguars for 2021.